Hello and welcome to Armchair Opinion. I'm your host Chris, and I can't believe it's been 31 years since Bill and Ted were first introduced to the world, and honestly I think about them all the time every time I see the number 69.
69 dudes!
While Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure wasn't a huge hit with critics back in 1989, audiences loved the movie and it was a big financial success. So much so, it spawned an animated TV show that I actually watched back in the day but I'd completely wiped from my mind. It featured the voices of the original cast, at least in season 1. That changed in season 2 when the voices were done by Evan Richard and Christopher Kennedy. These two guys also played Bill and Ted in the TV show. Yeah, there was even a TV show, only lasted 7 episodes, wasn't well received, don't know why.
I'm Bill S. Preston Esquire. And I am Ted Theodore Logan. And together we are Wild Stallions!
Okay, there was also a video game that was released that continued the events of the first movie that received largely negative reviews, and there was a sequel to the first movie, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, released only 2 years after the original, and it was financially successful but not quite as much, mainly due to its larger budget. There was even comic books throughout the years, there was even a serial at one point. So Bill and Ted as characters are properly cemented in our pop culture during the 90s especially. Now the script for this third movie was finished sometime in 2012 by Chris Matheson and Ed Solomon, same two guys who wrote the first two movies. It wouldn't be until 2018 that they would get a distribution deal and the movie would actually get made. And then one COVID-19 delay later and the movie is finally in theatres and on video on demand. Directed by Dean Parasut, the guy who did Galaxy Quest, Bill and Ted Face the Music sees Keanu Reeves reprising his role as Ted Theodore Logan and Alex Winter returning as Bill S. Preston Esquire. Bill and Ted have been told in previous movies that one day they will write a song that will unite the world, and they've dedicated their lives to that endeavour. Now middle-aged dads, the pressure and creative struggles of that destiny is causing a strain on their marriage. Just when they think maybe it's time to hang up their guitars and give up on that destiny, Kelly shows up and transports them to the future. There they learn that they have until that night to write and perform a song that will save reality as we know it. Confident that they won't be able to write the song, they decide to travel to the future where they've already written the song and steal it from themselves. Now Bill and Ted are incredibly likeable throughout all the movies. Rather than the usual one straight guy, one funny guy, these characters are practically identical. They're mimicking each other's mannerisms and finishing each other's sentences, and they've developed a unique vernacular that sets their dialogue apart from everybody else around them. It makes them much more interesting and elevates them beyond just a pair of dumb valley dudes. And that unwavering friendship and that familiarity between them is incredibly enjoyable to watch. You get the feeling that together they can get through anything, even death, and it gives them this enjoyable levity throughout all the mind-blowing situations that they find themselves in. And it's incredibly enjoyable to watch in this movie as well. It just feels a little odd having it come from dudes who are in their 50s. I felt like these characters worked a lot better as a pair of young guys. Where I once completely bought into these characters, now they feel like a reprisal of who they were 30 years ago, rather than like a natural evolution of who these guys would be 30 years later. Basically, they haven't really changed, so they're not quite as believable anymore. This time they have daughters played by Samara Weaving and Bridget Lundy Payne, and while Bill and Ted are travelling to the future, their daughters are travelling to the past, collecting musicians to form a band that can play Bill and Ted's song. And while I enjoyed the concept of legendary musicians meeting one another and jamming together, the two girls leading the adventure aren't as engaging as Bill and Ted themselves. In fact, I didn't really like the characters of the daughters, mainly because they just came across as an impression of Bill and Ted, rather than having different personalities which would have helped to separate the two adventures. Instead, you have Bill and Ted go to the future, and then young female impressions of Bill and Ted go to the past. I feel like it was a missed opportunity with these characters. The relationship between Bill and Ted and their daughters is unchanged throughout the movie. They already have the respect and admiration of their daughters. If they had had dissimilar personalities and they always struggled to connect with their daughters, that would have been for an enjoyable and interesting conflict. Having Bill and Ted, who are clinging to the glory of their youth, forced to grow up and accept responsibilities of their adulthood and try to find a way to connect with their daughters throughout this adventure would have been an enjoyable and interesting thing, I think, to explore. Instead, this conflict is given to their wives, When Bill and Ted realise that their marriages are in jeopardy, they figure the only way to fix it is by fulfilling their destiny. Meanwhile, the wives go on their own adventure, travelling through time to find a timeline in which they're happy with their husbands, to try to decide if they actually want to stay with Bill and Ted. But we don't really see this adventure. The wives aren't featured much in the movie at all, really, and the conflict here feels a bit superficial and ultimately rather shallow in its resolution. Taking the wives out of the story almost entirely and having the conflict be between Bill and Ted and the daughters, who already feature much more heavily in the movie, I think would have streamlined the script and given more of an arc to these characters and add much more of an emotional stake to the movie overall. However, there are some very enjoyable moments throughout the movie. Seeing the return of old characters is great. William Adler is back and he's fantastic. I really enjoyed the character of the killer robot, I think that was quite fun. And there are some genuine funny moments throughout. The movie does look a little cheap in places, especially in the future, which kind of looks like a poorly blended green screen. I think they've got the lighting wrong or something, but it looks very cheap. There is some fantastic makeup as well throughout the movie, and I really enjoyed the updated 90s MTV-esque lightning effects, especially towards the end of the film. Unfortunately, this movie doesn't really tread any new ground. The first movie was about collecting historical figures, the second movie was about heaven and hell, and this movie just seems to be a combination of the first two movies. It's a shame they didn't try to do something new. There's no real arc to these characters, any growth feels somewhat shoehorned in, so there's no real progression to them, so the movie feels somewhat pointless. However, there are some genuinely funny moments in the movie, and overall it is entertaining. If you enjoy the characters of Bill and Ted, you'll probably enjoy this movie. It just feels a little bit emotionless, and the movie is definitely more of a rehash rather than something new. I'm going to give Bill and Ted Face the Music a 7 out of 10. But I didn't just watch this movie by myself, I watched it with my good friend Jackie Chan. Jackie, what did you think of the movie?
When you go to see the movie, you have to the funny thing is that when the boomer know how to fight.
Okay, Jackie, if you liked the video, while you're being excellent to each other, go ahead and be excellent to me and hit that like button. And if you want to see more of what I do, feel free to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one.